Princess Zarathiel stood at the window of her chamber aboard the diplomatic station, watching the stars drift slowly past. Her reflection stared back at her tall, elegant, with silver-white hair that fell to her waist and eyes the color of pale violet moons. She was beautiful by any standard in the galaxy, a daughter of the mighty Valorian Empire, descended from a bloodline that had ruled for 10,000 years. And today, she would marry a human. The very thought made her stomach turn. Humans were such small creatures, so fragile and short-lived. They burned bright for barely a century before their bodies failed them. They possessed no telepathic gifts, no enhanced senses, no natural weapons. The Valorians had fought them for 30 years. And while the humans had proven surprisingly difficult to defeat, they were still considered primitive by the great houses of the Empire. Her father, Emperor Kelver, had explained the situation with cold practicality. The war had drained both sides. The Terran coalition controlled vital trade routes that the Empire needed. A marriage alliance would end the bloodshed and open new paths for commerce and expansion. It was politics, nothing more. "You are a princess of Valoria," her father had said. "You will do your duty." And so she would. The door chimed softly, and her handmaiden entered with a bow. "Your Highness, the Terran delegation has arrived. They await you in the ceremony hall." Zarathiel took a deep breath and straightened her ceremonial gown. The fabric shimmered like liquid starlight, designed to remind everyone present of her noble heritage. If she must marry beneath her station, she would at least look like the princess she was. She walked through the corridors of the station with her guards flanking her. Valorian soldiers in gleaming armor, each one capable of killing a dozen humans in hand-to-hand combat. She drew strength from their presence. The ceremony hall was a neutral space, decorated with both Valorian and Terran symbols. A crowd of diplomats and officials from both sides filled the room, their conversations dying to whispers as she entered. Zarathiel scanned the Terran side, searching for her future husband. She expected to see a military commander covered in medals, or perhaps a wealthy politician in expensive clothes. Someone important enough to be worthy of this alliance, even if he was only human. Instead, she saw a man standing quietly at the back of the Terran group. He was not tall, barely reaching her shoulder. His hair was brown and slightly messy, and he wore simple gray clothes that looked more suited to a worker than a wedding. His hands were rough with calluses, and there was a small scar above his left eyebrow. He stood with his shoulders slightly hunched, as if trying to take up less space. When their eyes met, he gave her a small, uncertain smile. Zarathiel felt her heart sink. This could not be him. Surely the Terran coalition had not sent a common laborer to marry a princess of the Valorian Empire. Ambassador Patricia Hayes stepped forward, a middle-aged human woman with sharp eyes and graying hair. "Your Highness, may I present Danny Cole? He has volunteered to fulfill the marriage requirement of our treaty." "Volunteered?" Zarathiel's voice was colder than she intended. "Yes, Your Highness." The ambassador's expression was carefully neutral. When the treaty terms were announced, many in our coalition were reluctant. Danny stepped forward so that no one would be forced into an unwilling union. Zarathiel looked at the man again. He met her gaze without flinching, though there was no challenge in his eyes. Just a quiet steadiness that she found oddly unsettling. "And what is your occupation, Danny Cole?" she asked. "Maintenance technician, Your Highness," he replied. His voice was soft and calm. "I fix things. Life support systems, power grids, that sort of work." A technician. A common repair worker. Zarathiel wanted to laugh at the absurdity of it all, but her training held. She was a princess. She would not show weakness. "I see," she said simply. The ceremony itself was brief and practical. Valorian traditions required an exchange of vows and a joining of hands. Terran customs apparently involved rings, simple bands of metal that Danny produced from his pocket. When he slipped the ring onto her finger, his hands were steady and gentle. "I promise to respect you," he said quietly, so only she could hear. "I know this isn't what you wanted. I'll try not to make it harder than it has to be." Zarathiel did not know how to respond to that, so she said nothing. The reception that followed was tense and formal. Valorian nobles looked at Danny with barely hidden contempt, whispering behind their hands. The humans seemed uncomfortable, out of place among the taller, more elegant Valorians. Danny stood quietly by Zarathiel's side. Accepting glasses of wine he didn't drink, and food he barely touched on at one point. Lord Vexaran, a powerful duke who had once sought Zarathiel's hand, approached them with a cruel smile. "So this is the human pet," he said, looking Danny up and down. "Tell me, creature, do you perform tricks? Perhaps you could fix a broken light for our amusement." The Valorian nobles nearby laughed. Danny simply looked at the lord with calm eyes. "I'd be happy to help with any repairs, my lord," he said politely. "Just let me know what you need." Vexaran's smile faltered. He had expected anger or shame, not quiet agreement. After a moment, he walked away with a dismissive snort. Zarathiel studied her new husband with new curiosity. Most beings would have reacted to such an insult. Even the weakest Valorian would have attempted some defense of their honor. But Danny had simply absorbed the mockery like water into sand. Was it weakness? Or something else? That night, they were shown to their shared quarters. The room was large and luxurious, with a bed big enough for 3 Valorians. Zarathiel stood uncertainly, unsure what to expect. Danny walked to a storage closet and pulled out a spare blanket and pillow. Without a word, he arranged them on the floor near the window. "What are you doing?" she asked. "Finding a place to sleep," he replied simply. "The bed is yours, Your Highness. You didn't choose this marriage any more than I did. I figure the least I can do is give you your space." He lay down on the floor, turning his back to her. And within minutes, his breathing had slowed to the rhythm of sleep. Zarathiel stood in the darkness for a long time, watching him. This strange, quiet human who fixed machines and slept on floors and accepted insults without anger. She did not understand him at all, and somehow, that bothered her more than the marriage itself. 3 months had passed since the wedding, and Danny Cole had become a fixture in the imperial palace of Valoria Prime. He woke each morning before the sun rose, folding his blankets neatly and placing them in the closet before Zarathiel stirred. He would wash and dress in his simple clothes, then spend his days wandering the vast palace, finding things to fix. The palace servants had been confused at first. A human prince, even one married into the family, should not be crawling through maintenance tunnels or rewiring broken heating systems. But Danny had smiled and asked politely for tools, and eventually they had stopped questioning him. Now they sought him out. When a food preparation unit failed, they called for Danny. When the lighting in a corridor flickered, Danny appeared with his toolkit. He learned their names, asked about their families, and never once treated them as beneath him. The noble houses of Valoria found this behavior disgusting. "He acts like a servant," Lady Mirathex complained at a court gathering. "It is shameful for someone of his position to perform such low tasks." "What position?" Lord Vexaran laughed. "He is a pet, nothing more. A trained animal that the humans sent to amuse us." Zarathiel stood nearby, pretending not to hear. She watched Danny across the room, where he was helping a young servant boy carry a heavy tray. The boy was smiling at something Danny had said. The princess felt a strange twist in her chest. Was it anger at the noble's cruelty? Or something else? She pushed the feeling aside. The weeks continued. Danny maintained his quiet routine, and the mockery of the court continued with equal consistency. At formal dinners, nobles would make jokes at his expense. At ceremonies, they they would accidentally bump into him or spill drinks on his clothes. Lord Vexaran took particular pleasure in these games, finding new ways each day to humiliate the human prince. Through it all, Danny remained calm. He would apologize for being in the way, clean up whatever mess had been made, and continue with his day. He never raised his voice, never showed anger, never struck back. One evening, Zarathiel found him in the royal gardens. He was kneeling beside a small pond, where a wounded bird lay in his careful hands. Its wing was broken, bent at an unnatural angle. "What are you doing?" she asked, approaching slowly. "Trying to help," Danny replied without looking up. "Found her by the south wall. Something attacked her, maybe one of those flying predators I've seen around the towers." He worked with surprising skill, fashioning a tiny splint from thin sticks and strips of cloth. His movements were gentle but precise, and the bird seemed to calm under his touch. "You care for animals?" Zarathiel asked. "I care for living things," he said simply. "They don't judge you for where you come from or what you are. They just need help, and you can either give it or walk away." She sat down on a nearby stone, watching him work. The twin suns of Veloria were setting, painting the sky in shades of purple and gold. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. "Why don't you fight back?" she finally asked. "The things they say to you, the way they treat you, any Valorian would have challenged them to combat by now." Danny finished with the bird and set it gently in a nest of soft grass he had prepared. Then he looked at her, his eyes calm and thoughtful. "Would fighting change their minds?" he asked. "If I challenged Lord Vexaran and lost, they would laugh harder. If I won, they would hate me more. Either way, the peace treaty suffers. Your people learn that humans are violent and dangerous, exactly what they already believe." He wiped his hands on his pants. "I'm not here to prove anything, Your Highness. I'm here to build a bridge between our peoples. Sometimes that means being the one who absorbs the blows." Zarathiel studied him carefully. In the fading light, she noticed things she had missed before. The way his eyes constantly scanned his surroundings, even in moments of apparent calm. The faded scars on his forearms, visible where his sleeves had rolled up. The particular way he positioned himself, always with a clear path to the exits. "You said you were a maintenance technician," she said slowly. "What did you do before that?" "I was in the service," he replied. "Military. Nothing special." "Nothing special," she repeated. "What kind of service?" Danny was quiet for a moment. When he spoke, his voice was softer than usual. "The kind that leaves scars, Your Highness." He did not elaborate, and she did not press. But something had shifted between them, a small crack in the wall of formality that separated princess from commoner, Valorian from human. That night, they talked longer than they ever had before. Danny told her about Earth, about the blue oceans that covered most of the planet, the forests of green that stretched for thousands of miles, the cities that glittered like jewels in the darkness. He described snow, which she had never seen, and rain, which Valoria Prime lacked. He spoke of his childhood in a small town, of a mother who had taught him to be kind, and a father who had taught him to be strong in turn. Zarathiel found herself sharing things she had never told anyone. Her loneliness in the vast palace, the pressure of being the Emperor's only daughter, the fear that she would never be anything more than a political tool for her father's ambitions. "You're more than that," Danny said quietly. "I've seen how the servants look at you. They respect you because you treat them with dignity. That's not politics, that's who you are." Zarathiel felt warmth spread through her chest. When was the last time someone had seen her as anything other than a princess? "You are a strange human, Danny Cole," she said. He smiled the gentle smile of his. "I'll take that as a compliment, Your Highness." From that night on, things were different. Zarathiel began to notice Danny more. the small kindnesses he performed, the quiet strength beneath his humble exterior. She began to look forward to their evening conversations, to the stories he would tell and the questions he would ask. She still did not understand him, but she was beginning to want to, and somewhere deep inside, she was beginning to realize that her common human husband might be far more than he appeared. The Festival of Eternal Stars was the most sacred celebration in the Valorian calendar. For 3 days, the people of the Empire honored their ancestors and prayed for guidance from the cosmos. The Imperial Palace was decorated with floating lights and shimmering crystals, and music filled every corridor. Emperor Calver had departed 2 days earlier for a diplomatic meeting with the border colonies, leaving Zarathiel to oversee the festivities in his absence. It was a test of her leadership, her father had said, a chance to prove herself worthy of the throne. Dany had offered to stay out of sight during the celebration, knowing his presence might offend the more traditional nobles. But Zarathiel had refused. "You are my husband," she had told him, surprising herself with the firmness in her voice. "You belong at my side." And so he stood beside her in the great throne room, dressed in the finest clothes the palace tailors could make for his smaller human frame. He looked uncomfortable in the formal attire, constantly adjusting his collar, but he smiled when their eyes met. The evening was going well. The nobles were behaving themselves, the entertainment was excellent, and even Lord Vexaran seemed content to keep his distance. Zarathiel allowed herself to relax. Just a little. That was when the lights went out. For a moment, there was only darkness and confused murmuring. Then the emergency lights flickered on, casting everything in a dim red glow. And then the screaming began. Armed soldiers poured through the doors, not palace guards, but warriors wearing the colors of House Vexaran. They moved with deadly purpose, cutting down the royal guards before they could draw their weapons. Blood splashed across the polished floors as bodies fell. Zarathiel felt Dany grab her arm, pulling her back toward the throne. His grip was surprisingly strong. "Stay behind me," he said. His voice different somehow, harder, colder. Before she could respond, Lord Vexaran strode through the chaos, stepping over bodies without a glance. He held a ceremonial blade in his hand, its edge gleaming with fresh blood. Behind him came more soldiers, surrounding the throne area in a ring of steel. "Princess Zarathiel," Vexaran said with a mocking bow. "How lovely to see you without your father's protection. What is the meaning of this?" Zarathiel demanded, drawing herself up to her full height. "This is treason, Vexaran. You will be executed for this." "I think not." The Lord smiled, showing teeth. "Your father is far away, and by the time he returns, you will be my wife, and I will control the throne. The great houses are tired of peace with the humans. They want a strong leader who will resume the war and crush these creatures once and for all." He gestured at Dany with his blade. "Speaking of which, I believe I'll start by killing your pet. Consider it a wedding gift." Zarathiel stepped in front of Dany without thinking. "You will not touch him." Vexaran laughed. "How touching. The princess protects her human. Don't worry, my dear, I'll make you forget all about him soon enough." He raised his blade and stepped forward, and then Dany spoke. "Your Highness." His voice was quiet, but it cut through the noise of the room like a blade through silk. "Please step aside." Zarathiel turned to look at him, and her breath caught in her throat. The man standing behind her was not the humble maintenance worker she had married. This Dany stood straight and tall, his shoulders back, his eyes sharp and focused. Every trace of uncertainty and meekness had vanished, replaced by something cold and calculating. He was looking at the soldiers, surrounding them 47 armed warriors with an expression of calm assessment, as if he was measuring them, as if he was counting. "Dany," she whispered, "what are you doing?" "What I should have done months ago," he replied. Please trust me, Your Highness. And please move. Something in his voice made her obey. She stepped aside, and Danny moved forward. He reached behind his back, beneath the formal jacket he wore, and drew out something that had been hidden against his spine. It was a sword, but unlike any blade Zarathiel had ever seen. The metal was black as void, and it seemed to drink the light around it, creating a small pocket of darkness wherever it moved. A gasp ran through the soldiers. Even Vexaran took a step back. That's impossible, the Lord breathed. That's a void blade. Those are only carried by shadow cores, Danny finished. His voice was still quiet, but now it carried the weight of absolute certainty. 1st Regiment. 237 operations across known space. 0 failures. He looked at Vexaran, and for the first time, the Lord saw what lay beneath the humble mask. My name is Commander Daniel Cole. Calcine, Reaper. And you made a very serious mistake tonight, my lord. Vexaran recovered quickly, his fear transforming into anger. Kill him, he screamed at his soldiers. Kill them both. The soldiers charged, and Danny moved. Zarathiel had seen Valorian warriors in combat. They were fast and strong, capable of feats that humans could never match. But what she witnessed in the next few minutes made everything she knew. Meaningless. Danny flowed through the soldiers like water through stone. He didn't fight like a Valorian. He didn't fight like anything she had ever seen. He used their size against them, slipping beneath their guards, turning their momentum into weapons. The void blade sang through the air, leaving trails of darkness in its wake. Bodies fell. 1, 2, 5, 10. Soldiers tried to surround him, but he was never where they expected. He moved between them like a ghost, striking vital points with surgical precision. Some died instantly. Others fell screaming, their limbs useless. 20 soldiers down. 30, 40. In 4 minutes. It was over. Danny stood in the center of the throne room, surrounded by fallen bodies. He wasn't even breathing hard. A few drops of blood marked his face and clothes, none of it his own. Vexaran was the only enemy still standing. The Lord had pressed himself against a pillar, his ceremonial blade trembling in his grip. All his arrogance had vanished, replaced by pure animal terror. What are you? He whispered. Danny looked at him with eyes like winter ice. I'm a maintenance technician, he said. I fix problems. He moved so fast that Zarathiel barely saw it. One moment Vexaran held a blade. The next, he was on his knees. Disarmed and helpless. Danny turned to face Zarathiel. For just a moment, the coldness in his eyes softened. Your Highness, he said, gesturing at the fallen lord. This one is yours to judge. Zarathiel stared at her husband, this stranger who had hidden himself so completely within the shell of a common man. Her mind was racing, trying to process everything she had just witnessed. Why? She asked, her voice barely a whisper. Why didn't you tell me? Danny lowered his blade. The darkness around it faded slightly. Because the treaty needed to work, he said. Because someone had to protect you, really protect you, and the Terran Coalition didn't trust anyone else with the job. He paused, and something human flickered in his eyes. And because after 237 missions, I thought maybe I could build something instead of destroying it. I'm sorry I lied to you. Outside, loyal guards were shouting, fighting to retake the palace. The coup was failing. But Zarathiel barely heard them. She was looking at Danny Cole, commander, killer, maintenance worker, husband, and realizing that she had never truly known him at all. The month before the bonding ceremony was the hardest of Ethan's life. Every day, he woke before sunrise and studied Kethrani language until his head hurt. He learned their history, their customs, their complicated rules about who could speak to whom and when. He practiced walking in formal robes that felt heavy and strange on his body. He memorized the names of hundreds of noble houses and the feuds between them that stretched back thousands of years. That Maya helped him when she could, testing him on vocabulary and correcting his pronunciation. Dr. Shaw spent hours explaining the hidden meanings behind simple phrases, the tiny insults that could be delivered with a raised eyebrow or a pause in the wrong place. The Kethrani speak with more than words, Dr. Shaw told him one evening. Every gesture, every silence, every movement of the hand carries meaning. You must learn to read them as easily as you read a book. And if I make a mistake, Ethan asked, then they will use that mistake against you. They will say you are too primitive to understand civilized communication. They will use it as proof that humans do not belong among them. Ethan practiced until his muscles ached and his brain felt like it was melting. He made mistakes constantly. He said the wrong words, bowed at the wrong times, moved his hands in ways that meant things he did not intend. But slowly, day by day, he got better. Valera visited him often at the embassy. She was patient and kind, never mocking him for his errors. She told him stories about her childhood and asked questions about Earth. They talked for hours about nothing important. And Ethan found himself looking forward to her visits more than anything else. You are learning faster than I expected, she told him one afternoon. They sat in the embassy garden, a small patch of alien plants that the previous ambassador had tried to make feel like home. Most Kethrani children take years to learn what you have learned in weeks. I have good motivation, Ethan said. I do not want to embarrass you in front of your entire empire. Valera smiled. You could never embarrass me. But I am glad you are working so hard. It will make things easier when the time comes. The bonding ceremony approached like a storm on the horizon. Invitations went out to every corner of the Galactic Compact. Representatives from dozens of species confirmed their attendance, most of them coming to witness what they expected to be a disaster. A human marrying Kethrani royalty was the biggest news in the galaxy. Everyone wanted to see it happen. The ceremony was held in the Grand Temple, the oldest building in the capital city. It was made of black stone that absorbed light instead of reflecting it. Inside, thousands of candles burned on golden stands, casting flickering shadows on the walls. The air smelled of incense and something sweeter, a flower that Ethan did not recognize. He stood at the front of the temple in formal robes of silver and blue, the colors of the royal house. His heart beat fast in his chest, but he kept his face calm. Maya stood nearby with a group of human diplomats. Watching with worried eyes, Dr. Shaw stood beside her, his old face showing quiet pride. Valera entered through the main doors, and for a moment, Ethan forgot how to breathe. She wore a gown of pure white that seemed to glow in the candlelight. Her dark hair was piled on her head in an elaborate arrangement decorated with tiny silver stars. She walked slowly, gracefully, her silver eyes fixed on Ethan as if he was the only person in the room. She was beautiful. Not just in an alien way, not just in a way that was strange and different. She was beautiful in a way that made his chest hurt. They met at the altar, where an ancient priest waited to perform the ceremony. The old Kethrani spoke words in a language so old that even Ethan's studies had not covered it. He and Valera repeated the words as best they could, their voices blending together in the quiet of the temple. Then, just as the priest reached for the ceremonial cup that would seal their bond, a voice rang out through the temple. I invoke the right of worthiness. Everyone turned. Prince Councillor Draven stepped forward from the crowd, his face twisted with cruel satisfaction. He wore black robes decorated with silver thorns, and his eyes burned with hatred as he looked at Ethan. By ancient law, Draven continued, any noble may demand that a foreign consort prove their value before bonding with Kethrani royalty. I make this demand now before all these witnesses. A murmur swept through the crowd. Valera's face went pale, and her hands trembled. "Uncle," she said, her voice tight with anger, "you cannot do this." "The ceremony has already begun." "The ceremony is not complete until the cup is drunk," Draven replied smoothly. "I am within my rights. The law is clear." The ancient priest bowed his head. "The Prince Counselor speaks truth. The right of worthiness may be invoked at any time before the bonding is sealed. What trial do you demand?" Draven's smile widened. "The Crucible of Shadows." This time, the murmur became a roar. Voices rose from every corner of the temple, shocked and angry and afraid. Ethan did not know what the Crucible of Shadows was, but from the reaction, he knew it was bad. "No." Valera stepped forward, her voice rising above the noise. "The Crucible has not been used in centuries. It is barbaric. It has killed more challengers than it has passed. Then your consort should have no trouble proving himself, if he is truly worthy." Draven spread his hands in mock innocence. "Unless, of course, he wishes to withdraw." No one would blame him for being afraid. The temple fell silent. Every eye turned to Ethan. He felt the weight of their stares pressing down on him, felt the judgment of 1,000 alien minds. They expected him to run. They expected him to fail. He thought about Valera, who had lost everything and still refused to give up. He thought about humanity, watching from 1,000,000 light years away, waiting to see if one of their own could stand among the stars. He thought about all the people who had ever been told they were not good enough. "I accept the challenge," he said. Valera grabbed his arm. "Ethan, no. You do not understand. The Crucible is ritual combat. You will fight a Kethrani champion who is trained since childhood. Their warriors are stronger and faster than humans. You will die. Then I will die trying." Ethan covered her hand with his own. "But I will not run. I will not give them the satisfaction." Draven laughed. "How touching. A human with courage. Let us see how long that courage lasts." The trial was set for 3 days later. Until then, Ethan was taken to special quarters in the palace, guarded but not imprisoned. The law required that the challenger be given time to prepare. Maya and Dr. Shaw came to see him that night. Maya was furious, pacing back and forth across the small room like a trapped animal. "This is insane," she said. "We need to contact Earth. We need to get you out of here." "I cannot leave," Ethan said quietly. "If I run, Valera loses everything. The noble houses win. Draven takes the throne. Everything we have worked for disappears. And if you die, then at least I died fighting." Dr. Shaw sat in the corner, studying a datapad with intense concentration. He had been quiet since they arrived, reading and thinking and calculating. "There may be a way," he said finally. Maya stopped pacing. "What do you mean?" "I have been studying the rules of the Crucible." Dr. Shaw held up the datapad. "It is a very old ritual with very strict rules. The combat continues until one fighter surrenders or can no longer continue. There is no time limit, no weapon restrictions. Just 2 bodies fighting until one falls." "That does not sound like good news," Maya said. "The Kethrani developed this ritual for Kethrani warriors," Dr. Shaw continued. "Their champions are trained to strike fast and hard, to end fights quickly. They are built for short bursts of intense combat, not for long battles." Ethan leaned forward. "What are you saying?" "Humans are different. We are not as strong or as fast, but we have something they do not have: endurance. Humans can take more damage and keep going. Humans can push through pain that would cripple other species. Our bodies are built for persistence, not power." Maya's eyes widened. "You are saying he does not need to win. He just needs to survive." "Exactly." Dr. Shaw smiled. "If Ethan can stay on his feet long enough, the Kethrani champion will exhaust himself. He will slow down, He will make mistakes. And if Ethan can outlast him, then I win, Ethan finished. Not by being stronger, but by refusing to fall. It was not much of a plan. It was desperate and dangerous and probably foolish. But it was something. It was hoped Ethan spent the next 3 days training. He did not try to learn how to fight like a Kethrani. He did not have time for that. Instead, he trained his body to take punishment. He practiced getting hit and getting up. He practiced breathing through pain. He practiced the one thing that humans had always been good at, not giving up. On the morning of the Crucible, Valera came to see him. Her silver eyes were red from crying, and she looked like she had not slept. "I am so sorry," she whispered. "I never wanted this. I never wanted to put you in danger." Ethan took her hands in his. They had grown comfortable with each other over the past month. Not quite friends, not quite lovers, but something in between. Something that could grow into more if they were given the chance. "You did not do this," he said. "Your uncle did. And I'm going to make sure he regrets it." "How can you be so calm?" Ethan smiled. "I am terrified. But I have been terrified before. Fear does not have to stop you. It just means you care about what happens next." Valera pulled him into an embrace. She held him tight, her alien body warm against his. The Crucible Arena was older than the Empire itself, that it sat in the heart of the capital city, a massive stone circle that had seen 1,000 battles and 1,000 deaths. The floor was covered with dark sand that had absorbed so much blood over the centuries that it had turned a deep brown color. Stone seats rose in rings around the fighting floor, packed with spectators from across the Galactic Compact. They had come to watch a human die. Ethan walked into the arena wearing simple white clothes, the traditional outfit of a Crucible challenger. The fabric was thin and offered no protection. He was barefoot, his hands empty. No weapons were allowed. This fight would be settled with fists and bodies alone. The crowd fell silent as he entered. Then the whispers started. He could not hear the words, but he knew what they were saying. Primitive, weak, foolish. They looked at him like he was an animal that had wandered into a place it did not belong. On the far side of the arena, his opponent waited. Kalen was the most famous warrior in the Kethrani Empire. He stood almost 7 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they were carved from purple stone. His violet skin was covered with scars from a lifetime of combat. He had won 11 crucibles and had never lost a single fight. The betting houses were offering odds of 50 to 1 against the human. Ethan looked at this monster of a warrior and felt fear crawl through his chest like ice water. Kalen could break him in half without effort. He could crush him like an insect. Every instinct in Ethan's body screamed at him to run. He did not run. Prince. Councillor Draven sat in the royal box with Valera beside him. She was forced to watch by tradition, unable to help, unable to look away. Her face was pale, and her hands gripped the arms of her chair until her knuckles turned white. Draven looked pleased. He had already won, and everyone knew it. This fight was just entertainment, a way to humiliate humanity before the whole galaxy. The ancient referee stepped into the center of the arena. He raised his hands, and the crowd grew quiet. "The Crucible of Shadows begins now," he announced. "The fight continues until one warrior surrenders or can no longer continue. May the worthy prevail." He stepped back, and the battle began. Kalen moved faster than anything Ethan had ever seen. One moment, he was across the arena. The next moment, his fist was buried in Ethan's stomach. The pain was beyond anything Ethan had experienced. He flew backward, hit the sand hard, and for a moment could not breathe. The world spun around him in a blur of colors and sounds. The crowd roared with savage joy. Kalen stood over him, waiting. The Kethrani warrior looked almost disappointed. Was this really all the human could offer? Ethan got up, took everything he had. His stomach felt like it was on fire, and his lungs burned with every breath. But he pushed himself to his feet and raised his hands again. The crowd fell silent. Kalen struck again, a blow to the chest that cracked ribs like dry twigs. Ethan went down. The pain was so intense that black spots danced in his vision. He thought about his mother, his sister, the green hills of Ohio. He thought about how easy it would be to just stay down. He got up. The fight became a nightmare. Kalen hit him again and again, each blow more powerful than the last. He broke Ethan's nose. He split his lip. He struck his ribs until Ethan could feel them grinding together with every movement. And every time he fell, Ethan got up. After the first hour, something strange happened. The crowd stopped cheering. They watched in growing silence as this human, this primitive creature from a nothing world, refused to stay on the ground. They had never seen anything like it. Their warriors fought with speed and power, striking to end battles quickly. They were not built for this kind of punishment, but this human just kept rising. Blood covered Ethan's face and chest. He could barely see through his swollen eyes. Each breath was agony. His left leg had given out halfway through the fight, so he stood on his right alone, swaying like a tree in a storm. But he stood. Kalen was breathing hard now. His strikes were slower, less precise. Sweat poured down his purple skin. He had fought for an hour straight, using all his power, and his opponent was still standing. It was impossible. It was unnatural. It was terrifying. Why will you not fall? Kalen demanded. His voice was hoarse with exhaustion. What is wrong with you? Ethan spat blood onto the sand. His voice came out as a broken whisper, but everyone in the silent arena heard it. Humans do not fall. We never learn how. He raised his broken hands and waited. The second hour was worse than the first. Kalen kept attacking, but his movements were sluggish now. His arms felt like they were filled with sand. Each punch took more effort than the last. Ethan took them all. He fell and rose, again and again. The sand beneath him was dark with blood, most of it his own. He could not feel his left arm anymore. He was pretty sure some of his internal organs were damaged. He was dying slowly, one blow at a time, but he was still standing in the royal box. The Lyra was weeping openly. She could not look away, could not close her eyes. She watched the human she had grown to care for being destroyed piece by piece, and she was helpless to stop it. Draven was no longer smiling. His face showed something that might have been uncertainty or even fear. This was not supposed to happen. The human was supposed to break. The third hour began. Kalen stumbled. His legs, designed for short bursts of combat, could no longer support him properly. He threw a punch that was almost gentle compared to his earlier strikes. Ethan took it on the shoulder and barely moved. "Surrender," Kalen gasped. He was bent over, hands on his knees, struggling to breathe. "Please, I do not want to kill you. Just surrender." Ethan looked at him through swollen eyes. He thought about Valera waiting in the stands. He thought about humanity watching from across the stars. He thought about everyone who had ever been told they were not good enough. No. Kalen raised his fist for another strike. His arm trembled. He took a step forward, and his leg gave out. The greatest warrior in the Kethrani Empire fell to his knees in the sand. He tried to rise. His body refused. "I cannot," he whispered. His voice was barely audible. "I cannot continue." The arena was absolutely silent. Then the ancient referee stepped forward, his face showing shock that he could not hide. "Kalen of House Varth is unable to continue," he announced. His voice trembled slightly. "The crucible is complete. Ethan Cole is victorious." For a long moment, nothing happened. The galaxy watched, holding its collective breath. Then, from the common sections of the arena, where the workers and servants and soldiers sat, a voice rose. Human! 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 More voices joined in. The chant spread like fire, growing louder and stronger until it shook the ancient stones. The common people of the Kethrani Empire were cheering for a human. It had never happened before in all of history. Valera broke free from the royal box and ran across the sand. She caught Ethan just as his legs finally gave out. She held him in her arms, her tears falling on his broken face. "You impossible creature," she whispered. "You actually did it." "Told you," Ethan managed. His voice was weak, his consciousness fading. "I do not stay down. Save your strength. The healers are coming. Did we win?" Valera looked up at Draven, who sat frozen in the royal box. His plans had crumbled to dust. His champion had fallen. The entire galaxy had just watched a human do the impossible. "Yes," she said softly. "We won." In the human embassy, Maya and Dr. Shaw stood before a view screen, watching the broadcast. Tears streamed down Maya's face. Dr. Shaw's hands were shaking. "He did it," Maya whispered. "The crazy fool actually did it." "He showed them," Dr. Shaw said. His voice was thick with emotion. "He showed the whole galaxy what humans are made of." Across human space, billions watched a broken man refuse to fall. They watched him take blow after blow and rise every single time. They watched him prove that humanity's greatest strength was not technology or power, but something far more precious: the refusal to give up. The bonding ceremony was completed 3 days later, after Ethan had recovered enough to stand. He was still covered in bandages, still barely able to walk, but he stood beside Valera at the altar and spoke the ancient words. When they drank from the ceremonial cup, the common people who had gathered outside the temple cheered so loudly that the sound echoed through the city. They called him the Human Prince, the one who would not fall. They painted murals of his bloodied face on walls throughout the capital. Draven disappeared shortly after the ceremony. Some said he fled to the outer colonies. Others said he simply vanished, unable to face the shame of his failure. On their first night as bonded partners, Valera and Ethan stood in the observatory tower, looking at the stars. "Do you regret it?" she asked him. "Leaving everything behind for me?" Ethan took her hand in his bandaged one. He looked at the distant point of light that was Earth's sun, so far away that the light took years to reach him. "I gave up a lot," he admitted. "But I gained something too. A chance to prove that humans matter. A chance to change how the galaxy sees us." He turned to look at her, at those silver mirror eyes that he had grown to love. "A chance to be with you." Valera leaned against him carefully, mindful of his injuries. "What happens now?" "I do not know. Your uncle is still out there. The noble houses still hate us. We have enemies everywhere we look." Ethan smiled, even though it hurt his broken face to do it. "But we are still standing." "As long as we are,"